Thanks for joining me as I travel the world, going from fine dining through to street food and local specialties, all in an effort to find the world's best seafood. Hey folks, in today's episode of World's Best Seafood, I'm in New York. If you don't follow my photography channel, check out the card above. I'm doing lots of vlogs here. I've just moved over to New York. I've just sorted out my apartment situation. So this is the first real meal I'm cooking myself, and I'm gonna make it a fancy one. So I went to a proper grocery store last night, which are a bit hard to find in Manhattan, and picked up a few little things, and I thought it's Sunday, so let's make a nice brunch. So, first of all, I got a little lobster. It's about 1 pound, just a small one. It was already pre-cooked, so hopefully they've done a good job of cooking that to the right degree. Some cilantro, some organic free-range eggs. The place I'm staying at, there's some mayonnaise, light mayonnaise in the fridge, so I'm going to use that. And I got some sushi grade tuna, yellowfin tuna. Now, I haven't actually tried this, but FYI, the lobster I've had in the fridge because I want to keep that chilled. The tuna I've actually had out getting to room temperature for a little while because we're going to end up putting that in an omelette, so I didn't want it to be too cold in the middle. Excuse me, tastes plenty fresh. So, I've not made any of this before. Believe it or not, being such a lobster lover, I've never done a lobster like this at home before too, so I'm gonna figure it out as we go along. But my plan is to make a barely cooked, but mostly rare tuna and cilantro omelette, and then just have the lobster chilled with some cilantro mayonnaise on the side. So, which way are we gonna do this? Let me put the lobster in the fridge for now, keep that nice and chilled. Let's get how much cilantro I think I'm gonna need. Give it a quick wash. Let's dry this off. So, as I said, I'm only using these ingredients plus a little bit of salt and pepper. I want to keep it, I was about to say as simple as possible, but I'm having damn lobster and sashimi grade tuna, so it's not exactly basic, is it? Now for this, I'm only going to take the leaves. You can absolutely use the stems. If I'm barbecuing stuff, I love the stems. It comes up really nice, but because this is going to be just put in a mayonnaise and an omelette, I don't want the fibrous parts. So let's fast forward this so you don't need to watch the whole thing, but I'm just gonna carefully get all of the good leaves. Now I realize cilantro, or as we call it in Australia, coriander, is not everyone's taste. It tends to be a love or hate thing for a lot of people, but for me it's absolutely a love. I mean, not even just for seafood, I love how fragrant and flavorsome it is. Okay, now as I said, I realize cilantro is not everyone's taste, but it obviously is mine. You can see by the amount I'm using. But you could swap this out for chives or parsley or something like that if you don't like this. But I think for an omelette, it's really nice to have some kind of nice leafy herb in there. Now I have to say, whilst Manhattan is crazy expensive for some things like housing, a lot of the groceries are actually really reasonable, at least compared to Sydney. A big bunch of cilantro for like $1, that could have run me $3 or $4 back in Sydney. Now, you'll notice by how poorly I chop, I am not a chef. I don't claim to be an absolute expert. I'm a food lover, so you know, I'm happy to share what little I know, and hopefully it's of some use. But it's also just a justification for me to eat this great food. Speaking of reasonable prices, the tuna was, I think, how much? Maybe 20 something a pound, which again is cheaper than Sydney. And that lobster was only 13 bucks, which is really cheap, although it is the Boston style with the claws. In Australia, we get the crayfish, which is all just a big tail. All right, so that'll do us for now. And I'm actually going to make extra of the mayo because I have extra tuna that I'll have later on in this trip. So, first off, so simple. I'm just getting a big squirt of light mayo. Take about half of that. I don't even have lemon juice to add to this, so that's how simple we're going today. But I'm just gonna mix that up. Nice. If you like cilantro, you can't go wrong with that, right? You might like to use a full cream, a full egg mayo though. Okay, the tuna, I'm just gonna cut into, how to describe it? I don't know my inches terribly well. Maybe 1/3 of an inch slices, like a really generous sushi slice. The reason being, I'm going to mostly cook the omelette and then just lay these in, and it'll just be ever so slightly poached. Now for this one, because it's going to be lightly cooked, I chose the piece of tuna that was the least sinewy of the two. You can see here we're starting to get to the sinewy part, so I'm actually going to skip that and have that as a chef's treat, just to eat with my fingers as I go. I'd rather chew it like this than find it in a nice soft omelette. Okay, now which way should I do this? Should I get the lobster ready? Yes. So there's my tuna for later. So our friend Pinchy, we're going to need a pair of kitchen scissors. So let's first lose the handcuffs. Come on. Okay. Now, there's meat in the head, in all of the legs, of course the claws, in the knuckles here and the tail. So for this, I was actually thinking to, first of all, let's just twist the legs off, do it nice and gentle and try and pull any meat that's there out. You can see one was successful and one wasn't. So that means on this side, I've still got the meat in the body, so I definitely am gonna catch that later. Now for the head, again, straighten up the tail, and then it's just a twist. It comes off really quite easy. I'm just doing it gently so I don't damage the meat or lose too much of it. Okay, now, if you're an absolute seafood lover like me, there's a lot of yummy stuff inside the head there, which I will leave. Yeah, and it's fresh, that's the tamale, which I will leave again for the chef's treat later. So, I'm actually thinking to, even though I'm just having it at home, good and fresh, I'm thinking to serve it in a nice way. So I'm gonna try and have the claw meat as a single piece if I can, on both of them. The knuckle meat, I might even throw into the omelette. And then the tail I'm gonna cut up and then present it back inside of this. Now, it'd be a lot easier if it had been poached with that flat, then it would lay flat. If you're ever gonna poach a shrimp to put on sushi, or you want to keep the tail straight, humanely kill the animal first, and then you actually put like bamboo skewers in there whilst it's uncooked. Then when it cooks, the meat won't tense up and close, it'll stay flat, so you can use it flat. So I'm just going to cut down the side on the underside, right inside the shell. Now the bottom of the tail is really soft. Now, I actually cut all the way into this top section because there is actually meat up there on both sides. And you don't want to go too far in because I don't want to chop up the meat. Okay, now that should just peel off. If it's been well poached, yeah, the meat comes away really nice and easily. So we'll pop that there. And then there is our tail. So it's not a huge lobster. Again, you can discard this stuff or you can eat it. I actually really like it. Now, let's make a little bit of space here. I'm just going to simply slice it right down the middle because just like prawns, lobsters do have an intestinal tract and you want to get that nastiness out. But this one was surprisingly clear. No poop. So if I'd known that, I probably wouldn't have sliced it that way, but you never know. So then I'm going to just chop it into bite-sized pieces. And then put it back in the tail. Okay, so our tail is nicely cut up and ready to serve. I broke one of those off, sadly. C'est la vie. Now the claws. You can again just twist at each of the knuckles and they break reasonably easily. Especially, oh, look at that, the first section of meat has already come out. Especially these smaller lobsters, the shell's actually really fine. So you can either use your finger or a bamboo skewer and push out each of the lumps of meat from in there. So there's one. Now, because I'm not trying to assemble the whole thing and I'm just going to use this as lump meat, it's not too much of an issue if it gets a little bit mangled. So I'm going to put it over there to put in my omelette. Now, to get the actual claw out, you want to gently work this, twist and work it around. Just break it free nice and gently so that when you pull it away, the goal is that the skinny piece of meat stays attached to the rest of the claw. But it's really easy to break, so I'm trying to be gentle, which is not what I'm known for. Here we go. Ah, and nailed it. That white piece, if you don't get that out attached to the bone, it ends up inside the bulk of the claw meat, so you really want to get that off if you can. Okay, then getting the meat itself out. I'm just going to make sure the meat's not up against this side of the shell. Again, you'll be surprised the shell on these little ones is really not that thick. You can just break it away. And you could serve it like that, but I'm going to just take the whole piece out. How gentle you want to be depends on how pristine you want to keep the piece of meat inside, and I'd like to have it looking nice just because. Okay, so it's stuck a little bit on the bottom side, but there we go. There is one piece of claw meat out. That's the smallest claw. Now the bigger one. Yeah, come on. Oh, so close. So I got the sinew out, but the actual piece of lobster claw is there, so fail. Now these are nothing special, the kitchen scissors, they're just the ones that were in the drawer here. They're not made for lobster or anything. And there is our second claw out. So in two pieces, but there it is. And again, that's ready to go with that white piece out, this guy. There's only nice meat there to eat, nothing else. Okay, so let's get all of the meat out of these joints. Okay, so then we've got all of this stuff. Now, honestly, the tamale and some of the meat in here, I would normally put in the omelette, but to keep this so nobody gets queasy, I'm just gonna make it nice and simple. But here, I mentioned I didn't get that last piece of meat out of the bottom joint. You can see it's actually quite a bit of meat. I like to, if I'm gonna take the life of a beautiful lobster, I wanna get every little ounce of it and not waste parts of it. Okay, now again, I'm keeping this super simple. Let's just get a bowl. I'm using a nice non-stick pan, so I don't need to use too much oil. Now I'm just putting that on a really low heat. I actually don't want to have the pan bubbling hot. I actually prefer when I am making scrambled eggs to put it in a cold pan and just really slowly move it around, not whisk it and stuff once it's in the pan, and that gets it really nice and creamy. I often do it the same way for an omelette, but this one, because it's gonna have these big chunks of meat in it, I need it to hold together. So I do need it to have, you know, a reasonably firm crust around it so that it's gonna hold together. Now I'm actually putting 4 eggs in here, but I'm going to take 2 of the yolks back. So it's gonna be 2 whole eggs and 2 egg whites. Again, make it to your taste. I know some people are all about the egg yolks. For me, I'm all about the egg whites. Obviously, you can see my Calvin Klein modeling contract is really strict, so I have to watch my figure. Let's grab just a little bit of milk. This is not going to be a hugely bad for you breakfast, although some people wouldn't agree with shellfish at this time of day. Just a fork, and then I'm not looking to actually make it, you know, really aerated and fluffy. I just want to mix it. That'll do me. Let's go over to the stovetop. Okay, I am going to use just a tiny bit of oil. Like really less than a teaspoon. Move that around. Now it is really the middle that I most want the oil because the sides always seem to lift up by themselves. So here is our egg mixture. Okay. Now I'm going to turn it up a little. Okay. Into that, a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, throw in most of our cilantro, but not all, because I'm going to keep some as a garnish. And here is our tuna. Oops, forgot to have my treat. And a little bit of lobster. So we'll just get the bottom of that going. How's it looking? Starting to come along. Yeah, you can see the centers coming together there. Just the edges, which can always be difficult. What I'm actually going to do, grab this giant pan lid, sit it over the top, and that'll help cook it all through, even though we're getting a nice golden bottom on it. Just gonna leave that there for about 30 seconds. Okay. There we go. Okay. So I'm just gonna grab a flip, make sure that I can get the side up. You gonna come away from me? Yeah, you are. Okay, now before that, let's turn it right down. And I'm gonna put my tuna in. You can actually see that part wasn't touching it, it lifted up so much. Now that I'm putting this in, it's actually sitting it back down. Now this one barely fits, so let's swap those around. Pop it in here. So there you go for a better view on it. Grab a little bit of that knuckle meat from the lobster. Just pop that in as well. Now, to be honest, I probably cooked this a little bit too much before closing it because it's not nice and juicy still for it to actually form a seal on the inside, but I think I'll forgive myself on that. Yeah, that's looking nice. Just give that a moment. I'm personally of the opinion that everything is better slightly undercooked, except for potatoes and chicken. But now I've eaten raw chicken, it's only potatoes. So even eggs, I'd rather them be a little bit under. So I'm gonna take that out. Let's turn it off. Now this will slide out super easy for me. Easy peasy. Okay, let's go back to the cutting table. Okay, so my omelette is done. Let's just move that over to one side. Grab the last of my garnish. Nice. Because I know my own taste. Little bit more pepper on top. Tiny, tiny bit of salt. Now, I put the lobster back in to chill, so let's get that out. Now, I wanted to keep all that lovely juice and not waste it, so it's all in the plate. So one claw and the other claw, which sadly broke. But I'm going to pour most of this lobster juice back into the tail, actually just a little. I don't want it to get all over the plate. And let's see. Just because it's for you guys, obviously if I was doing this at home, I wouldn't be doing this, but let's clean up the plate a little. I want to clarify, I would never do that for myself just at home. Nice little dollop of the cilantro mayo. Keep the other half for dinner, and there we go. Done. Lobster and tuna omelette and a poached lobster on the side. Just a little Sunday brunch. Let's eat. Bon appetit. Okay, let's try this lobster. Surprisingly, not overcooked. I thought buying it from that kind of place, I'd be running the risk they would have poached it to death, but it's good. FYI, I bought it from Fairway Supermarket in Long Island City. Let's take a look here. Yes, the tuna is barely lightened in color from cooking. You can see? Pat on the back for me. To be fair, like I do to other restaurants, the sauce is incredibly bland. That needs lemon or something better than just cilantro and mayonnaise. But the omelette definitely works. Hope you enjoyed that. Please do like and subscribe and check out my other channel for my adventures in New York. And follow me here for your seat at the table for my future adventures to find the world's best seafood. But right now, the best is right here at my brunch table. See ya.